Hello, everyone. I'm Vance Ballard with the National Sports Media Association. Joining me today is Boston Celtics beat writer at the Boston Globe, first-time winner of the Massachusetts Sportswriter of the Year, Adam Himmelsbach. Adam, how are you today?
I'm great, Vance. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us.
No
We'll
problem.
start with an easy one. Tell me about how you became interested in sports journalism and how you became sports writing as a whole.
Yeah, like a lot of kids, I just had a big love for sports and was hopeful to have an NBA career. Like every 7-year-old thinks maybe they can make it. Get practice. I grew up in Syracuse, practicing your free throws in the snow, things like that. And then you start to realize it's not going to happen. Um, and there was some family pressure to maybe do something a little outside of sports. So I'm like, what if I do sports medicine? So I did a little internship and I was like, that's not for me either. I was like, well, I'm a pretty good writer. This is all like in high school. I was like, I'm a pretty good writer. Maybe I'll give that a shot. And I just started working for my high school newspaper, became the editor, and then went to Syracuse University's journalism school and just kind of kept going.
And here you are now. It seems to have worked out pretty well for you.
It's worked out okay.
Speaking of that, yeah, I know you mentioned Syracuse. Tell me a little bit more about your journey from Syracuse to the Boston Globe to where you are now and what was in between there.
Yeah, my first job, well, I actually worked part-time. And so I grew up in Syracuse. I went to college there. And after I graduated, I worked part-time at a small newspaper outside of Syracuse called the Auburn Citizen just for about 6 months. You know, I don't mind saying I made like $7 an hour, covered high school games. I was like, hopefully this turns into something, but I'm not sure. I took the LSATs. I wasn't sure where my path was going to be right then. But then I got a job in Fredericksburg, Virginia, at the Freelance Star, which is about like a 50,000 circulation daily. Well, it was when I got there. Now all the print circulation is down. I'm not sure what it is. And I covered a little bit of everything for there: NASCAR, high schools, a little NBA and NFL, because DC is about 50 miles away. And while I was there, I started freelancing for the New York Times. My paper was pretty good about it. Like, they understood it wasn't really competing with our smaller paper, and it was a good opportunity for me. So I freelanced for the Times for about 6 years, I want to say. Then in 2012, I got a job at the Louisville Courier-Journal, where I was a sports columnist and kind of investigations enterprise writer. And I was there for 3 years. And then the short story is University of Louisville football was playing Boston College football. And I guess it would be like November 2014. So I came here, I went out to dinner with my friend who happens to be a journalist too, and he said the Boston Globe needs a Celtics writer. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And I sent an email to their editor, and it all happened really fast. 2 months later, I was here in Boston.
Not pretty good work if you can get it.
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of fortuitous how it all worked out.
Not a bad gig there. And so that was what, about 2015 when you joined the Globe, correct?
Exact. So it's almost 10 years ago to the day. I don't know. January 26th was my first day at the Globe, 2015. So we just
Well,
passed. I just passed.
happy anniversary, just a few
Yeah,
days late. Well,
I appreciate that.
congratulations on that. A good segue into this next one. Nice reward for your 10-year success there. This is your first Sports Writer of the Year award. Can you put it into words, kind of what it means to be noticed and respected as for your craft, since this award comes from your peers, just what it means to be appreciated in that regard?
Yeah, it's really cool. Obviously the whole process from just being nominated and seeing all the other nominees. Like the nice thing with this industry is you get to know a lot of people. Um, just from your travels. It's not like I'm sitting behind a desk all day. I'm going places and meeting other journalists, and I've had different jobs covering different things. So you see those names. Like I see the names of my friends in Kentucky and my friends in Virginia popping up. So it's really cool to kind of be a part of that and not just be nominated, but have people vote for you and say, hey, he's actually deserves to win. So it was really a real nice honor.
Right, and you're not the only person I've gotten that from as we've sat down to do some of these interviews. The close knitness and the tightness of the community, seeing your friends here and your friends there, and so it seems that this whole industry is kind of receptive and appreciative towards each of their peers, and happy to see them do well, which is good to see.
Yeah, it is a cool thing for sure.
So now your title, Celtics reporter at the Boston Globe. That's a title that's been held by some pretty big names in the industry. What does it mean when people say Himmelsbach up there in the same line as the likes of Ryan or Shaughnessy or McMullen, just other people who have covered the Celtics? And did that come with any pressure when you got the job?
I appreciate the kind words, but I'm not on their level. Maybe someday. But I actually just got an email from Bob Ryan like 5 minutes ago. It's funny you mentioned him. But yeah, it's still cool to follow in their footsteps, I think is probably a better way to say it. They really set the standard. The Globe really, I think, I'm a little biased, but I think we have the best sports section for a city paper in the country. And it's just like a real dedication to covering teams the right way, um, people who care about what they're doing, and I mean, it's a cool place to work. But yeah, for sure, like even when you walk in the Celtics locker room, they have a couple of they're not framed. I don't know how to describe them, maybe lithographs or something, but they're some front pages from the Globe from like the Bob Cousy, Bill Russell era, and they're on the wall in the locker room, and it kind of hits you when you walk past and see stuff like that.
Right. It just kind of carries what it means to work for such a paper and cover such an illustrious franchise and organization as a whole. And you kind of touched on one of my follow-ups there, speaking of your email with Bob Ryan. But when you came into this role, did you speak with any past reporters for the Celtics, or did any of them reach out to you with any advice on maybe what it's going to mean to or how to take on this role?
Yeah, obviously, I spoke to Bob a lot. Bob's retired from the Globe, but he still thankfully writes for us like maybe once a month. And Dan Shaughnessy is one of our columnists who actually is going to be in your Hall of Fame this year.
Cool.
That's like
Yes,
a
Hall
really
of
cool honor
Fame.
for Dan. But he covered the Larry Bird Celtics and has all kinds of stories. It was just a different time back then. He flew on the team plane with the players, sometimes went out drinking with them. It was not like today at all. But I love hearing his stories, and then even just leaning whenever I have a question, kind of like, hey, how would you handle this one? He's always uh, picks up the phone right away and has some good advice.
So that's good to hear that. And like I said, just kind of speaks more to the tight knitness of the industry that we were talking about earlier. Now, Adam, when you got to Boston, it wasn't exactly rainbows, sunshine. You kind of showed up and were hired in a time of turmoil for the Celtics organization as they were in a low point and trying to build back up. Talk a little bit about what it was like from a reporter standpoint, starting in the downs, going through those downs, and then going along the ride that has gotten the Celtics to where they are now, with obviously coming off a championship and hoping to go back to another one this season.
Yeah, I still remember my friend who told me about the job I had dinner with. He was like, the team's horrendous, but it's still the Celtics. I was like, yeah, it doesn't matter to me how good the team is. Sometimes the bad teams have the best stories, but it was more striking to me was how quickly they rebuilt. I said I got here January 25 or 2015, and like a month later they trade for Isaiah Thomas, who just kind of really just flipped the franchise. And there was, it felt like there was a new, during that span, I felt like there was like a trade every other day really leading up to the deadline. And, they traded Rondo, obviously, before I got there, traded Pearson Garnett. Just a full reinvention, really, by Danny Ainge. But with really the trade with the Nets that got them those two picks that turned out to be Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, like changed everything. But I think the Isaiah Thomas, the Avery Bradley, the Jay Crowders, they brought in guys that brought a certain toughness, that knew they weren't going to be championship contenders, but kind of showed the young talented guys coming in like what it takes, like just veterans who had that kind of heart and leadership. And then ever since then, it's been a real ascension. They've have just kept climbing, and then last year obviously finished it off and won their championship.
And I'm sure that makes your job, I don't want to say easier, but just a little more comfortable when they're having success to this nature as opposed to the turmoil and confusion that it was when you first got there back in 2015.
Yeah, I mean, people are in a better mood. A lot of times readers actually, when when there's turmoil as a journalist, sometimes that's pretty good because readers want to know what's going on. They want to know why this went wrong. When are they going to make these trades? When's this going to happen? Whereas now they have last few years just total stability. They just have generally had the same lineup for the last couple of years after bringing in Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and they're just a good group that really fits Brad Stevens' mold. So, but people also like to read about champions, so that's been pretty helpful as well.
And speaking of those readers, what's it been like? I know you mentioned your time with the Louisville Courier and some other small papers. What's it been like going from a place like that that may not be thought of as the biggest market into the Boston Globe, which everyone knows what that is. That is maybe one of the larger market sports sections in the country. What was the transition like becoming a writer in such a large market?
Yeah, it's cool. It's funny though. I always tell people like the amount of emails I get from whatever people in high school or college or even people just graduated, and they say, "I want to cover the NBA. How do I cover the NBA?" And I say, "You're going about it all wrong. That shouldn't be your focus. It can be a goal, but it shouldn't be your focus. Your focus should be how do I become a journalist? How do I become a sports journalist?" And for me, by far, the most valuable time I had was that first job when you're covering a high school football game and it's 38 degrees out, sleet, you have an umbrella in one hand, a notebook in another, you're keeping your own stats. The game ends, you got to hustle and find the player and coach you want, interview them by yourself, and in the pro level, a lot of it can be spoon fed. Sometimes there's people who show up, you watch the game, stats are handed to you after every quarter, you sit in a press conference, you don't even ask a question, you just use those quotes. The covering high school sports is the best like trial by fire and the best way to learn by far, to me more than anything. So that was really valuable to me.
Gotcha. And that, like I said, that also kind of touches on one of our final questions here as we wrap things up. What piece of advice that maybe you were given early on in your career or that you've just picked up from market to market, job to job, would you give, say, students or young professionals like myself who are looking to make their name or break into the sports media industry?
Yeah, I mean, that really is the biggest piece, what I just said. Um, but also read a lot. Um, Sometimes people, whatever, watch the sports TV shows and get informed by that. Like sitting down and reading, it stretches your vocabulary. It shows you different ways to write, different styles. It's so immensely helpful. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Like your job is to find stuff out generally. So sometimes if it's a hard question, somebody might not like it. Like that's okay. Worst case is, someone you probably don't even know might be a little annoyed with you. Like it's gonna be all right. So don't be afraid to ask good questions. Read, cover high school football games, and just have fun with it. Like more than anything, like I'm a realist. Like I know there's a lot of people who do a lot more important things than I do. But I think I'm also pretty lucky to be able to do this for a job. So just kind of embracing it and making sure you have a good time while you're doing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Adam. Like I say, we'll begin to wrap up here. Last question, championship not included, because that's an obvious answer. In your time with the Globe covering the Celtics, what's been I don't know if favor is the correct word, but maybe the most memorable piece, feature, story that you've been a part of since you've been there in the last 10 years?
Oh man, that's a long time to think about stories. A couple come to mind. Obviously, the more recent ones, the ones that come to mind. I mean, generally, so for me, I really enjoy it. Like the games are fine. They've become a little repetitive to me. I love telling a story that's never been told before and like really being able to like sink your teeth into something. So thankfully, the Globe does give me the time to do those. So I've done kind of long form features on most of the important players. Like when Jason Tatum's 19-year-old rookie, I remember sitting with him in the lobby of their hotel in Salt Lake City for like an hour and just having him open up for the first time. And he's a shy guy. And then talking to his parents and other people who are important in his life, his coaches, and just like being able to tell the story, especially when a guy's young like that. And like if you're a Celtics fan, you knew Jason Tatum from Duke, you don't really know who he is, and being able to say, here's what he went through, here's how he got to this point. I really enjoy that type of stuff.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Well, again, thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate you for your time today. Congratulations on your win. Well deserved. Um, all the best to you. Good luck to you and the Celtics as things continue. Thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, no problem, Vance. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.